Okay, chapter 20, Tehillim. I'm not saying this because I'll be young father, not sorry, this I give Hashem and the young cave. Isha Hesa Hamikodesh Mitzi Sadeka. Iska Kama Hesa Korelation Sava. Beaten the heart of Mabeka of the Tasa Hayamali. I'm Mishpasa Hashem and Nidio. Malia and I commission Lisaha. Ata Yodai taking Shia the Mashiach Yana, Mishpekache. The voice of she meaning. This one of Noskin. In the Caribbean, follow the come, we say that Adonai Shia, Amalek Yaneinu, V'Yenkarenu. Very good. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Open the door, please. Come sit closer. Rather leave the door open. Okay. No, I'll tell you why, because otherwise someone might come late and say, oh, I can't, they'll be shy and not enter. See? I'll leave the door open.
Wait. Leave it like half open. Just leave it there. I'll leave it open.
Chapter 5 discusses the unique quality of learning Torah. Behind this is a debate that runs through the Talmud, which is greater? Is it greater to perform a mitzvah, or is it greater to learn Torah? What's the difference? We learned in chapter 4 that by performing a mitzvah, a person becomes enveloped and clothed in the mitzvah. The mitzvah becomes your garment. And we use the example of a dancer. The dancer is following what the choreographer's instructions are, but putting his or her own feeling into it, and their grace. No two dancers are alike. So when if we are the dancer and the dance is the mitzvah, then we're doing the mitzvah dance. We are in the mitzvah, and the mitzvah is the will of Hashem. So we become completely united with Hashem by doing mitzvahs. Are you sure? You're sure? And this applies to every mitzvah. Learning Torah has a special quality. It says that learning Torah is the debate rages through the Talmud. The conclusion is really that doing mitzvahs is greater than learning Torah, because which is higher, a person's brain, his intellect, or his willpower? We know that if a person wants, he can increase the capacity of his brain. Why? How's that? Through willpower. If you really want to, you can become very smart. I experienced this when I was a young fella in university. So I lived in a dormitory. There was one person there. He was a very nice person, not Jewish, very simple. And he took upon himself the hardest course in the whole university. hardest in which sense? That it required the largest amount of reading of any other course. And he was a simple person and used to spend a lot of time reading and studying, and barely passed, barely made it, because he wasn't a very clever person. It was just simple. But he passed. And he came back for a second. It was a 4-year course. And he came back, and again, he plugged away at it. And he passed with a slightly higher mark. He did a little better. And then he came back for a third year, and he got himself up to a C minus. Which was sort of almost respectable. And after the 4th year, he graduated. And probably became, a government official, a clerk in some government office or something like that. Because whatever he did properly. But it showed me, just by dint of pure hard work and desire to succeed, he made himself much more clever and intellectually clever. So we see from this, I learned from this, that your willpower is so great that it can even change your IQ, it can change your mental capacity. So which is greater, your mental capacity or your willpower? And I would conclude your willpower. And what is willpower in terms of Torah and mitzvahs? Your willpower is mitzvahs. That's what Hashem wants. That's what he asks of you. And that's why we also noted on the way through that when someone does something that you ask them to do, they fulfill your will, your desires, they fulfill your wishes. How do you feel? Good. Makes you feel happy. And when children do not fulfill the wishes and the requests of their parents, what happens? They get in Yiddish, they get a chelik, they get yelled at, or they get other negative responses. Because this is the unique feature of willpower, that when a person's will is fulfilled, he feels a pleasure, which we call in Hebrew nachat. Nachas. A mother or father says to a child or grandchild, my nachasol, you are my nachas. You are going to take care of me when I'm old and gray. You are going to fulfill my wishes, and so I love you. That's nachas. And the opposite, when a person does not fulfill your wishes, why did the accountant not do this? Why did the lawyer not follow my instructions? Makes me upset. When your will is not done, it makes you upset. So which is greater? So the conclusion of the Talmud is that mitzvahs are greater, because with a mitzvah, you become totally unified with the will of Hashem. What's the catch? Learning Torah is also a mitzvah. With learning Torah, your mind becomes connected with the mind of Hashem. The wisdom that is in the Torah and the wisdom in the mitzvahs now becomes something that you can take possession of it to the extent of your IQ. Obviously, Hashem's wisdom is infinite. There's no end to it. And not only that, learning Torah has an advantage that doing mitzvahs doesn't have, which is that through learning Torah, you have all the mitzvahs in the realm of intellect, because you have to fulfill everything in action and speech as much as possible, and in the world of thought. And thought is an entire world. So that's how the debate goes. The ultimate conclusion is, according to Rabbi Akiva, the great Rabbi Akiva, who says that in truth, mitzvahs are greater than Torah, but we say that Torah is greater because through Torah you keep all the mitzvahs. Without the Torah, you can't keep the mitzvahs at all. So by learning Torah will lead you to fulfill the mitzvahs, even though mitzvahs are intrinsically greater because they are the willpower of Hashem. But learning Torah is the conclusion is that learning Torah is greater because it leads you to do all the mitzvahs. And in this chapter 5, we're going to learn a Hasidic approach to this whole discussion. Okay, so it starts off with the concept which we read yesterday on page 91. We're going to move through it a little more quickly today. That the word tefisa means to grasp. And Elijah the prophet, teaches us that no thought can grasp Hashem because Hashem is infinite. Yes, Elijah can teach us. Who is Elijah? What is Elijah? Elijah is really a malach, an angel. It's a divine creation. So we read in the writings, Elijah went alive up to heaven. And it says that Pinchas, in the story of when the Jewish people were during their 40 years in the desert, there was a terrible war between Midian and the Jewish people. And what led to the war was the lewdness of the Jewish people with the Midianite girls. The Midianites sent their girls to seduce the Jewish men. Because Bilam, the wicked, the evil prophet, had grown up in Midian. Moshe had been in Midian. They asked his advice. What should we do? How are we going to prevent the Jewish people from taking over our country and our land? Because the prophecy was that this was given by God to the Jewish people. And he said, the God of the Jewish people hates immoral behavior. Send your daughters, seduce their men, and you will be able to conquer them. And that's what led to the whole war. And the high point of the war was when one of the princes of Israel, of the tribe of Shimon, took as a concubine, that it means a mistress, took as his mistress a princess from Midian. And her name was Cosby Bastsur, not to be confused with the American comedian Bill Cosby. And he had a tribe, 24,000 people followed his example. And Pinchas arose and killed them. They came to Moshe, and Moshe didn't know what to do. The one point in his career, Moshe did not know what to do because his wife was also from Midian. But that was from earlier, from before, when it was permissible, before the Torah was given. Zipporah, and she was a righteous person. So that's the story of Pinchas. And it says about Pinchas, Pinchas was Eliyahu. How could Pinchas be Eliyahu? Pinchas lived at this point in time. Eliyahu lived hundreds of years later. Eliyahu is Elijah. And the answer is, it was the same soul, but Elijah was created before Pinchas. So we can say Pinchas is Eliyahu, because Eliyahu came first, because Eliyahu is an angel. So here is Eliyahu. Eliyahu, there are a lot of things in the Torah. It said the yeshiva of Eliyahu taught kach v'kach. So one of the things that Eliyahu teaches is that no thought can grasp Hashem. Someone tells you that, you say that, yes, we learned that from Eliyahu. Okay. Now it goes on page 92. Turn the Yeah, page 92 at the top. When any person with his seichel comes up with an idea, that means to say he or she is maskil, an idea. With their intellect, they come up with an idea. Umasi, they grasp the idea. Where do they grasp it? In the seichel. And what it was that they grasped? They grasped the muskel. So the muskel is the idea. The maskil is the grasping of the idea. And the hasaga is the understanding of the idea. Hare haseichel teves es hamuskel. So the seichel grasps the concept. And the concept is now in your seichel. It wasn't there before. And the muskel is surrounded in your seichel. It now becomes something internal in your mind. Muskel nitves, mukaf, umalubish, betecha seichel. So that the concept is now grasped and surrounded within the seichel and enclosed within the seichel. So yisige, hiskile, the seichel which is grasping it and comprehending it and understanding it. Bottom 92. V'gam haseichel melubish b'muskel. And it goes both ways, because the seichel now, your mind is in the idea. You see, you go to learn a new subject, you go to a class studying a scientific principle or a mathematical principle or a physical principle, and you got it, you get it. At first it's puzzling and you concentrate and you figure it out, and your mind is so involved in the concept that you don't notice time flying. Oh, he's thinking of a new concept. His mind is elsewhere. Right? And you understand. So that your mind is in the seichel, and the seichel is in your mind. Goes both ways. Two different ideas. So the intellect, bottom of 92, is clothed within the subject. Within the subject is the muscle. At the time that the intellect is comprehending it and grasping it. 93. Now he's going to spell it out. Now it becomes a little clearer. He spells it out. Very interesting. When there a mashal, you know what a mashal is? A mashal is literally a parable, an example. The idea of a mashal is to illustrate and clarify a concept, which is just vague and undefined. So I'll give you something that's more detailed and clearer and easier to understand. And once you understand that, then you'll understand the principle behind it. That's called a mashal. The idea behind the mashal is called a nimshal. Should I write it on the board? A mashal is a parable, and the nimshal is the idea behind the parable. What the parable is coming to illustrate and explain for you. So if a person is really brilliant, his ideas may be too difficult for people to understand. So it's necessary for him to give parables to explain his idea. And sometimes the parable is also difficult to understand, and you need a parable to understand the parable, right? And the more brilliant the person is, the more parables you need to get to the idea that they're really talking about. So the parable is called a mashal. A mashal. And the idea that the parable illustrates is called a nimshal. And the mashal explains the mashal. And the mashal comes to explain the concept. So really the concept is the nimshal. The mashal makes it understandable. A brilliant person may need many masholim to bring down his idea till people can begin to understand it. For instance, Rabbi Meir, famous Rabbi Meir, he needed 300 masholim to bring his ideas down to the level that they could understand him. So in the Talmud, whenever Rabbi Meir presents an idea, no one argues with him. They don't argue with him because he's too deep. He's too deep for them. Now we have a whole book in the Torah called Masholim. It's called Parables, the book of parables. Who wrote the book of parables? The son of King David, Shlomo HaMelech. King Shlomo. King Solomon. It took him 1,000 masholim to bring his idea down. So you have to understand 1,000 masholim to get to what it. Okay? So, back to page 93. When, for example, a person understands or comprehends a particular halacha, it gives us a choice. Halacha is the rule that we go by. That's the law. Where do we find the halacha articulated? In the Mishnah. What is the Mishnah? Mishnah, remember we discussed this, we mentioned it on passing through. Mishnah, the root of the word Mishnah is sheni, which means shnayim. Echad, shnayim, shalosh, 3. Mishnah also means to repeat. To repeat something. So Mishnah Torah, the 5th book of the Torah, is called Mishnah Torah. It's a repetition of all the teachings of the first 4 books. And Rambam codifies the laws of the Torah. It's called Mishnah Torah. Mishnah, as we learn it here, I would say, is like a building block. The building blocks of Jewish knowledge are Mishnah, where we have a concept. For instance, we have a concept in the Torah. You should have a mezuzah on the doorpost of your house. It says in the Shema, these words should be upon your heart. You should say them every day and teach them to your children, and think about them when you say them when you go out or when you're at home, and you should tie them on your hand as tefillin over your head, and write them on the doorposts of your house and your gates. How am I supposed to write them on the doorposts of my gates? What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to take a pen and copy these words on the doorpost? Which doorpost? What color ink? Which letters? How do we make each letter? How many letters go on each line? These are all details. Doesn't say in the Torah. So where are these details found? How do I know what I'm supposed to do? That's the oral tradition. That's the explanation of the commandment. The commandment is to write the words of the Shema on the doorposts of your house. But all the questions are not listed in the Torah. They are explained in the oral Torah. Where in the oral Torah? In the Mishnah. That's what Mishnah is. However, it's immense. It's an ocean. All the laws of the Torah there are so many details that really even non-religious Jews who are not observant keep hundreds of mitzvahs without even realizing it. That's just the way they were brought up. They didn't know it was a mitzvah. They thought that's how I'm supposed to behave. So everybody knows that a mitzvah has a little case you put beside the door. Sometimes, unfortunately, they go to the grocery, to the general store, be a department store. That's what they're called. You go to the department store. Do you have mezuzahs? Sure. They sell a mezuzah. something that they can just put up on the doorpost. It shows that they're Jewish, but it's not really a mezuzah. When young people go and ask if they have permission to check the mezuzahs, would you mind if we checked your mezuzahs? We'd like you to have a good kosher mezuzah on your door. It's a protection. It's like having brakes on your car. You can't drive without the brakes. You have to have the protection of the mezuzah on your door. And they find that one time I found a photocopy of the Ten Commandments inside the mezuzah case. They bought it in the department store. So we need the Mishnah to teach us all these laws, and you should know. This is a fact that a lot of people do not realize. The laws in the Mishnah were given together with the written Torah at Mount Sinai. So that you have a woman, Margaret Mead, a world-renowned scholar, anthropologist, right? She came out with the ludicrous statement that the laws of the Torah were made up by a bunch of rabbis in the desert. Absolutely ridiculous. A statement of a complete ignoramus. How can you say such a thing? Unless you know nothing and you just speak from your stomach, or you have no brains. These laws are as holy as the written Torah, as the words of the Torah, because they are the explanation of the words of the Torah, and they are given at Mount Sinai. And they establish principles upon which scholars can deduce more, understand more, and apply these principles to all kinds of situations. But I don't know all these situations. So therefore, we have the Talmud, which comes to explain the Mishnah. And that's also a tradition passed down from teachers to students, an unbroken chain from the last 3,500 years. This is a great treasure that we inherit. And unfortunately, due to the difficulties of our exile, we aren't brought up with it. Generations past, people were brought up with it, much more knowledgeable. So when, for example, you understand or you comprehend a halacha, a law, how is a mezuzah to be made, for instance? Where does it go? What are all the details? It's explained in the Mishnah or in the Gemara, and you understand it clearly and thoroughly by studying it carefully and knowing it till it becomes part of you in your mind. So he says in the second paragraph, page 83, your intellect grasps and encompasses this halacha. And your brain, your intellect, your seichel is enclosed in the halacha as you are striving to understand it and memorizing it, and it becomes part of your knowledge. Third paragraph. Now, this halacha is the wisdom of Hashem. You'll never get to the end of discovering the wisdom of this halacha. And it is the will of God that this is how it should be done. So that's a fantastic unification of your mind and Hashem's mind, and like two drops of water, they become one thing. Hashem is in your mind. Now you have Hashem in your mind. For example, fourth paragraph now. For example, in Hashem's mind, Hashem conceived of a situation. For example, l'mashal. Now we're moving into a mashal, because the concept is very abstract. His mind, my mind. So we need to bring out a mashal to make it part of our awareness. If you have a person, we'll call him Reuven, and he claims that he was a partner with Shimon in this business, and they had a disagreement, and Reuben claims that he should get so and so much money, and Shimon claims no, it's not true. even if this situation, or this argument between Reuben and Shimon, this disagreement about how they should be conducting their business, never took place. And maybe it's a situation that is so unusual that never will take place. But it's possible that it might have taken place, or sometime it might possibly take place. Then the resolution of this disagreement is going to be such and such, exactly like it's. And that's what the Mishnah comes to tell us. That if this is the scenario, and this is the claim of Reuben, and this is the claim of Shimon, what are we going to do? That's the conclusion. For instance, there's a talus, classic example, brought in the Talmud. A classic example, there's a talus lying in the street. Maybe it was after Simchas Torah and somebody dropped his talus and he went staggering home. And Reuben sees this talus in the street and he runs over and he grabs it. And at the same time, Shimon runs from the opposite direction and he grabs it. And they're both holding it. And Reuben says, why are you grabbing the talus away from me? And Shimon says, no, you're grabbing it away from me. No, from me. No, from me. And they're both grabbing it. They're both holding on to the talus. And neither of them wants to let go because he knows the talus costs $100. That's a nice talus. And it was lying, nobody wanted it. And they don't let go, and they go to the Rav. Rav said, Rabbi, straighten this out. What's the situation? He says, I grabbed the talus before he did. No, he says, I grabbed it before him. And they're both holding on, and they're not letting go. So what's the decision? Sorry, if you were the rabbi, what would you say? Who gets the talus?
I'm not the rabbi.
You're not the Rebbetzin either. Well, the law is you divide it. You divide it in half. They both say, at least half is mine. Okay, so you can have your half. What happens if one of them is a nice guy and he says, I'm willing to accept that I should get half? He says, no, well, I'm not. I want the whole thing. What do we do? Now what do we do?
Don't we give it to the person who is okay with half?
Yeah.
Do we give it to the person who is okay with half of it?
How much are you going to give him?
All of it?
All of it? He's not even asking for all of it. He said, I'm okay to take half. I concede that he got it at the same moment to me, equal between the two. We both got it at the same moment. I'll take half, let him take half. What's the judge going to say? You claim that you want the whole thing. You're only going to get a share because you have to share. The other person is claiming that he deserves half, but he's only asking for half, so he gets half of his half. He gets a quarter, and you only get 3/4. That's the law. That's the law. That's how it works. Where do we see this exact plays itself out? In a classic example of the two prostitutes who had illegitimate children the same night, and one of them died. And she took her dead child and she switched it with the other one, which was alive. And the mother whose child was alive wakes up and her child is dead. What's going on? Each one states their case. So they went to sleep. One child got smothered. One child didn't. One woman is lying. The other one is. They come before King Solomon. What are we going to do? Well, we learn the Mishnah. Split it in half. Just like a blanket. Split it in half. My mother says, no. Let her have the whole thing, but don't kill my child. Someone else says, you get the child. The other woman is a liar. Famous story. The whole King Solomon was 12 years old when he adjudicated that case. And they said, what a wise king we have. So that's how Mishnah works. And that's how Gemara works, explaining the details of the Mishnah. And what the Tanya is telling us here is what we get from it. When we learn it, we become connected and unified with the wisdom of Hashem and the will of Hashem. Which is greater? Well, we're going to work this out in more detail. But the bottom line is the Torah is greater because through Torah you get to know how to do all the mitzvahs. Mitzvahs are greater, but Torah is greater because without the Torah you can't do the mitzvahs. Thank you very much. We have to be very grateful for this beautiful weather, even though it was a little rainy the other day. It wasn't too serious. It wasn't really a heavy rain. No, it was more good weather. Baruch Hashem. Oh, broken. What was that? Yesterday, Esther showed it.
Não precisa comer bastante, não. Я там не должна, можно найти. Я закрыла дверь. Он сказал, иди ко мне, иди сядь, и я открою дверь. Ну, я открыла. Смешно. У вас сегодня работает, да? Да. Там нужно сделать, будет тест до. Да, да, это. Два раза больше времени не делаешь, будет два раза больше. Нет, так, в смысле, два раза больше нам делать будет, чем. Поэтому что сегодня делаем одну часть, а вторую. Мы с Изей будем в салату бить. Я люблю это. I think he was saying because one mother was like, wait, we can't. Oh, yeah. So there was it's emotional. It's basically, two women go before the king and he says, the law is, you both want it, you both say it's yours, you don't know who's telling the truth, and now cut the baby right in half. And you get half of that baby. And one mother is like, that's fine, at least I got my half. And the other one is like, no, I'm not killing my baby.
On Friday,
You know what? If that's the option, she can have the baby. Oh, Mrs. Leslie recommended it.
Oh, good. Which one?